Welcome to session 2 of unit 1 of principles of economics. Under this session, we are going to talk about the scope of what? Economics. We're going to talk about the scope of economics. Now that we know the meaning of economics, you will agree with us that it would be worthwhile if we were also introduced to the specific activities studied in economics. That's why we want to look at the scope of economics. Actually, apart from human and related activities, we also have some broad distinctions in economics that we need to know. I would like to ask, have you heard about macroeconomics and microeconomics before? Just think about it. If you've not heard about it, don't worry. We are going to go through. Have you also heard about positive and normative economics? Yeah, okay. Don't worry if you don't really understand or you've not heard it before, but you can do your research before you can even continue with this slide. By the end of the session, we believe that you should be able to explain the human activities studied in economics. You should also be able to distinguish between positive and normative economics. And at last, you should also be able to distinguish between microeconomics and macroeconomics. You can read from other sources and then come and subject yourself to your model. All right. Now, we will start with looking at what economists do, or what economics is about, or what entails in economics. What do economists do? Have you thought about that? Who is an economist in the first place, and what do they do? What is their tax? So this image I have is like the person is thinking about what economists do. So okay, what do economists do, right? Okay. Now, I said in one of the introductory sessions, economics is a lively and fascinating subject dealing with many of issues that affect our everyday lives. In fact, it is not a subject that can be learned only by reading. Econs cannot be learned only by reading. You would have to enjoy it most if you can relate the topics to your own life or people in the society. That's how you can, enjoy economics. And before we continue, we have to let you take your job and write as many problems that you think of or you face as an individual. Now we'll go through the questions on this particular slide, but try and write some questions down for your own self. Yes, and what are some of the questions that will still remain unanswered? So let's look at an overview of economics that could be provided by the following questions. We have some 7 big questions that can give us an overview of economics and also give us some idea of what economics do. Now let's look at the first one. The first one is saying that how do people choose? How do people choose what to consume? How to produce? How these choices affects or are affected by the discovery of new ways of doing things. This can be linked to production, consumption, and technological change. How do people choose to consume or choose what to consume? We are looking at consumption. How do people choose, or firms choose what to produce? We are looking at production. And how does what people want to consume and what firms want to produce inform a new technology or bring about technological change? Now the next question is, what determines people's income? Have you thought about that before? And why do some people receive much larger rewards than others whose efforts appear to be similar? Why is it that there is some kind of difference? And this can be linked to broad term that we call wages and earnings. So you look at why is there a disparity between the workers in a particular company, how their efforts appear to be similar. We can also look at the cause of unemployment. What are the causes of unemployment, and why some groups are more severely affected than others? And we can also talk about, governance or the government, get questions about the government. What do government spending and taxes influence economic life, or how do government spending and taxes influence economic life? And what happens when the government has a deficit? We are also looking at why do prices rise. We are looking at questions that makes us understand what economics is all about. Although we have the definition of economics, we want to look at what economists do. These questions will help us, have an idea of what economists do. Now, why do prices rise? Why do prices rise? Why do prices rise? Why do some countries sometimes experience rapid price increase while others have stable prices? Like let's say we are comparing Ghana to the United States of America. Why is it that in Ghana we see that every day the prices are increasing, but you look at the United States and it seems like the prices are stable? Why? Why is that so? That talks about inflation, talks about inflation. I mean, you can also look at what determines the pattern and the volume of trade between nations. Trade between what nations, and what are the effects of tariffs and quotas on international trade. This is talking about international trade in general. This question is about international trade. Then we also look at wealth and property. Yeah, what causes differences in wealth among nations? You cannot compare Ghana to even, let's say, Qatar or Egypt in terms of wealth. What causes the difference between the nations, or making the people in some countries rich and others poor? Why is it so? So actually, the questions outline, or the questions we looked at, outline what economists do. Economists talk and write about employment of men and resources, about production, organization, and distribution of incomes, about prices and inflation. Don't worry, we'll look at this particular slide. I'm trying to explain what we looked at in the previous slides. Mostly economists also concern themselves with problems of balance of trade, balance of payments, and international trade. They also look at savings and investment, taxes and spending, and an overall motive of an economic development and growth. Now, how about economics itself? Well, what economics do? We are looking at what economics do. Economics is concerned, it is mainly concerned with the administration of resources, for the satisfaction of human wants. Satisfaction of what? Human wants. And it deals with the problem of relationship between resources and human welfare. Economics also concentrates largely on market phenomena. It deals mainly with problems associated with the determination of prices of goods and services and other factors of production. Why is the price of Milo not the same as the price of Carabao coffee? So economics looks at that. Economics is also more than the study of the economy at large. You have to put that in your mind. It extends to business decisions, such as like the analysis of the cost and benefits associated with a specific activity, determining optimal use of resources and optimal output levels, and determination of prices in markets, and effects of regulations. In fact, it is really argued that economic logic underlines all business decisions, and all government policies. You should have this in mind. So means that economics talks about things about individuals and about the nation itself. So we can this way break economics into two, linking that of the individual and talking about that of the economy at large. That leads us to what we call the micro and macro economics. And I believe you have heard about the word micro and macro before. If you have not heard before, you can first check your dictionary and then we link into what economics is. So we believe that micro is actually small and macro talks about what? Large. So let's see how this is connected to economics. Microeconomics analyzes the objectives and decisions of individual economic units. The key word is what? Individual economic units. And when we talk about individual economic units, we are looking at maybe individuals, let's say consumers, we are looking at companies, firms. We are not looking at the entire country at a go. We are looking at individuals, we are looking at firms, we are looking at government agencies or specific projects, agencies, not the entire country at a go. So we look at individual specific firms. And actually, it is concerned with optimizing the behaviors of individual firms, industries, and consumers, and deals with the effects of individual taxes and specific public spending programs. The main goal of microeconomics is to understand how actions of consumers and producers affect price and output. Let's say affect the price and supply. Microeconomic analysis offers a detailed treatment of individual decisions about particular commodities. A study of the level of output and employment for a particular factory in Ghana, for example, would belong to microeconomics. So I have a picture here that summarizes the definition of microeconomics. So you can see small units of the economy like household and firms. You're looking at consumers' decisions, we have the individual decision, we have the firm decision, and we are looking at supply and demand, which leads to what? Changes in what? In prices. Alright. So we might study why individual household prefer cars to bicycles and how producers decide on whether to produce cars or bicycles. Consumers' choice about what commodities to buy is microeconomics decision. Maybe you as an individual decide, okay, I go to the market, do I buy red pepper or green pepper? Maybe you're going to make salad, so you're contemplating that decision you are taking talks about or is linked to microeconomics. And government agencies decision about how much to spend on a specific project is also a macroeconomic question. How much should I spend on this project? Maybe you're looking at a construction agency. Okay, they want to construct the markets maybe at Accra, at Cape Coast, at this place, at Northern region. How much should they spend on that particular project? Let's now look at macro. Let's now look at macroeconomics. Macroeconomics deals primarily with explanations of a country's overall level of economic activities. That is the key phrase, country's overall level of economic activities. It actually emphasizes the economic interactions in the country as a whole. It is concerned with the aggregate behavior of consumers. So it's like we combine all. So if you have like 10 companies, we combine all the aggregate. Like let's say when you write BCSS exams, they say the aggregate, you have aggregates, but you have individual grades. When they add some number of grades, say the aggregate. So the macro is looking at the combination uh, of behavior of consumers and what producers at the country or the country level. We are looking at the entire country as a whole, or we can look at even international level. Now, decisions about the total amount of money supply, government spending, new investment or taxes drawing a given year are macroeconomic issues. And macroeconomics also deals with the factors which determine national output, employment, general price level, total spending. When we talk about general price level, remember when fuel prices increase or go down, you hear that the JPRTU are coming up with new fare prices, maybe the troll prices, taxi prices. So the macroeconomics deals with the factors that determine national output and employment. It talks about the general price level. It also talks about total spending and saving of the economy. We also look at the total imports and exports. We also look at demand and supply of money and other financial. It talks about a whole lot of things. It combines the individual, the firms, and other things the government does. A whole variety of things. And actually, the goal of macroeconomics is to identify the factors that influence the national level of or the level of national product and national income. You should have the main goal to identify the factors that influences the level of national product and income. National income. So I have a summary of what macroeconomics is. We look at the government spending. So the government, there's an individual, there may be a firm here, the individual invests in a bank, other things, they they make contribution, they pay taxes, to the governments, and there's also contribution of flow in the world at large. You see, that's macroeconomics. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is positive and normative economics. Positive and normative economics. So, do you really listen to news on TV? I believe most of us don't listen to, but if we should do, it will help us a lot. Remember when the petrol price in Ghana increased? Everybody was complaining that the cost of living, was high, and we refer to such statement as positive statements. And the other side of the argument was that government, tried to subsidize the fuel prices in order not to increase the cost of living. And we refer to such arguments in economics as what normative statements. Let's now go into detail and see the distinction between these two statements. Let's say positive and the normative economics. Let's go deeper into it. What is positive economics? Positive economics deals with objective or scientific explanations of workings of the economy. Actually, the task of positive economics is to develop new models that accurately predict economic reality. And the emphasis of positive economics is on what is, not on what ought to be. And we are looking at what is happening. We are not looking at what ought to be done. So let's look at examples of statements that describe positive economics. So let's look at it. The demand model, we are saying the demand model predicts when the price of a commodity increases and the quantity sold of the commodity decreases. When the government imposes tax on what's good, the price of the good will rise. We can also say, okay, we are looking at what is the case. Okay, when government imposes a tax on a good, prices rise. when favorable weather conditions can increase the output of maize, it can increase consumption of maize, it can reduce the price of maize and other things. How about the normative economics? It offers prescriptions or recommendations based on personal value judgment. So you see, the positive gives us what is, but the normative tells us what ought to be done, having being exposed to the reality. So we know this is what is going on according to the positive economics. And then normative is saying what is supposed to be done, what ought to be done. So it is the task of normative economics to determine the cost and benefit of alternative ways of accomplishing desired objectives. And normative economics deals with what ought to be done, as we have said. And examples of statements that describe normative economics include: the government should subsidize the health bills of the aged instead of the rest of the population. The government ought to extract oil in large quantities from the rocks in Ghana. The problems of the Ghanaian economy can be minimized if our ministers reduce their travel outside of the country. If could a traveler stops traveling outside the country. This brings us to the end of this session. I hope you understood. If you didn't, you can take time to go right over and you can go through your model, your textbook to understand better. Try and solve the questions in the textbook. It will help you the more. See you in the next session that talks about the concept of scarcity and choice. Thank you.